The first most common INFJ mistypes that I see are definitely ENFJs. ENFJs, why they can type so frequently as INFJs is because they share all the same cognitive functions, just in a slightly different order. They're gonna have very similar strengths, very similar weaknesses. However, it is going to be a different flavor between the two. I'd say how you could tell the difference between the two is that ENFJs could definitely maintain way more relationships, like close friendships in their life than say an INFJ would. I'd say INFJs kind of tap out at like 3 to 5 close relationships that they regularly keep up to date with, versus ENFJs, I think they could have just so many. They have their work relationships, they have, their childhood relationships, they have their college relationships, as in like friendships, and all of those I feel like they can maintain for a long time, regular contact, and like still feel close with all of them. So that's the first mistype that I see. Very, very, very common. I know so many ENFJs who would tell me they would take a test and type as INFJs. And it's always funny because they would read the description and be like, yeah, I totally feel like that's me. But like in my mind, I'd always be like, for sure they're extroverted, but I'm not gonna like pop their bubble, just because they are very similar. And even for myself, I used to always type on the test as ENFJ. The second most common INFJ mistype that I see are ISFJs. And ISFJs, it's like kind of funny and always like really ironic that they would believe that they're an INFJ, because the two types are actually, they're a little similar, but they're actually really, really different. Leading with introverted intuition versus introverted sensing, those two cognitive functions are like completely at the opposite ends of like the spectrum. Introverted intuition is very future focused, introverted sensing is very past focused. So they do share their second and third cognitive functions in the exact same order: extroverted feeling and introverted thinking. So they are, of all the introverts, the most likely to seem quite extroverted with that secondary extroverted feeling. And they are pretty logical people. I think you meet INFJs and you meet ISFJs, and they are so grounded with a sense of logic for their decisions. They are headstrong in that way. But again, yeah, the two types are very, very different. It's hard because 75% of the world is sensors. So I think a lot of people who take online tests, they like to answer questions in a way that doesn't actually reflect how they properly perceive information. Sensing means that you're taking in information through your five senses, something you see, hear, touch, very real, physical, concrete details and facts. Versus intuition, those are very like abstract, conceptual. You can't see it with your eyes, but you have to think it and imagine it. And I think because of that, when a wording on a test is like, I love to think about new ideas, or I love exploring concepts, a lot of people will answer it as if they do. But when you actually talk to them, you just start to realize they aren't interested in a lot of those more abstract concepts. They will kind of want to change the conversation or topic of conversation. And yeah, I think that's a clear sign that a person might actually be an S instead of an N, which is why the ISFJ is another common mistype. Then the third other potential mistype, and I've seen it a couple times, is INTJs and INFJs, particularly if it's a male INFJ and particularly if it's a female INTJ. Because of gender norms, men predominantly being thinkers and women predominantly being feelers, those two can kind of get mixed up, as well as they are very similar types in some ways because they share the cognitive function of introverted intuition as their dominant function. And, out of all the 16 types, they are the only two that have that as their dominant function. And then because those judging functions of introverted thinking and extroverted feeling, or introverted feeling and extroverted thinking, they are the middle parts that a type would use for productivity and to accomplish their goals. At the core, that first dominant function definitely can show in the way that they're just very headstrong individuals. They know what they want from a young age. They have a strong vision for their life. But then I think differences you could notice is, INFJs just are definitely genuinely warm people. And I can't say the same about INTJs, though they can be very, very kind-hearted, very good-hearted. I don't think warm is a word that I would ever use to describe an INTJ. The fourth common mistype, and when I was first figuring out typology and trying to figure out my type, I thought I could have been this one for a long time, and that is the INFP. And so the INFP, they're only one letter off from the INFJ, as all three of these other ones. They've only been one letter off for the INFJ. And I think that's very, very common with online tests, is most people test and they get something close to their type. Maybe, 40% of the time they might actually get their type, but a majority of the time, I think a lot of people type close to their psychological type on a test, and it's usually one letter off. So INFPs and INFJs, they come off kind of similar in some ways. They're both introverted, they're both intuitive, they're both feeling based. However, they don't share any cognitive functions, so it makes them very, very different types. Once you actually get to know them, INFPs, they have that extroverted intuition, and it's very exploratory, and sometimes it could be quick and just kind of bouncy energy, versus introverted intuition. What an INFJ has is very, it's internal, and it goes long and deep into one topic. And so that's an immediate difference. And also the extroverted feeling versus the introverted feeling. Introverted feeling in an INFP, it comes off very strong, and you just know that they are not afraid to upset other people. They don't particularly prioritize group harmony, although, they of course want genuine connection, good connections, good relationships. But versus an INFJ, they will be pretty sacrificial with their own well-being if it means that it's pleasing someone else. At least in your early days, that is their natural inclination, and they have to train themselves to turn that off and to be more kind of value-based for themselves. So that's definitely a difference that could be noticed between the two types. And then the last common INFJ mistype, and I've actually seen this a couple times, and it's always really surprising, but once you learn about socionics quadras and cognitive functions, it makes sense. And that would be the ISTP. The ISTP shares all the same cognitive functions. They're in the same quadra, which means they're the beta quadra. And I can see how they can come off similar, but they're very, very different. Again, primarily because of that S and that N dichotomy, the sensing versus the intuition. ISTPs are definitely a bit more grounded, not so much in theory, not so much, in their head, but they can have similar vibes. They're very easy to talk to. They are generally very optimistic and happy people that strive to improve themselves. They can be kind of romantic. They love to connect to people. But that is a mistype that it's always funny because, again, they have slight similarities, but they're very, very different. And you have to really get into cognitive functions to understand why those differences completely make sense. If you are interested in learning about cognitive functions, I have a free guide that I'll link down in the description box below. Go ahead and check it out. I also have a paid guide that's 88 pages, really, really, really beautiful. And yeah, I have a website that if you want to take a quick 4-question MBTI quiz to find out which of the 16 personality types you could be or most likely are, I'll also link that in the description below. And if you have any requests for future videos, feel free to comment. If you got value from this video, feel free to like it. And I hope to see you next time. Thank you so much.